Bam.
This is Hunter Green, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
That's right. That's right. We're here and we're in Phil's backyard. And I'm with Hunter Green. Hunter is Phil's son. Those of you know that Phil is our friend. It's always been exciting and a hopeful day to talk to you, Hunter, because someone who's emerging into something great like you're doing right now. It's neat to see like where you're at and how the process has been. So, if everybody doesn't know, Hunter is a starting kicker for University of Northern Colorado, University of Northern Colorado, the Bears, and you punt and you place kick. Is
Yeah, that's correct.
How rare is that?
I feel like it's something you find a little bit rarer in college football. Usually, a lot of guys coming up through high school, they take on both the roles. They kick, they do their field goals, usually kick off as well, and punt. Just because there's not as many people in high school that do that, and there's a lot more schools. But then once you kind of like it gets fined down into a collegiate sport, usually at the higher level, schools are looking for more of a guy who can handle one thing and another guy who can handle another thing. So a guy who comes in and can handles field goals and kickoffs, and then a guy that comes in and handles punts, usually two separate. In Northern Colorado, I mean, we're Division I, but we are a little bit smaller compared to just some of the rest. And so I feel like that's one of the reasons I've been able to take on the role of doing all of them. And I mean, it's not just that I go in and they're like, okay, you're going to do all three. Like, you still have to earn those spots. And I do have fellow specialists on the team that also compete with me for those spots, but I just turned out to be better at those positions. So
do you get along with the other kickers?
Yeah. I feel like it's important, although you're competing against, it's got to be like a friendly competition. You can't just be, it's not like Hunger Games where you're just all on your own. It's like you versus everyone else. You got to have those friendships, because just the friendships with other guys and the friendly competition, it's gonna help you get better, and it's gonna propel you forward to greatness.
Yeah. Speaking of greatness, one of the things that amazes me is when you think about football and just calling, hiking the ball, snapping it, catching it, putting it down, twisting it. There's a lot of things going on in about, I don't know, a third of a second.
Yeah.
It's so fast, and then you don't have time to think, or maybe you do. So what do you do mentally from the time you finish taking your steps to be in place to be ready? What's going through your mind at that point?
Well, for my kicks, you always want to have the same routine. A routine is going to help you like focus and kind of get you locked in. And so I take my 3 steps backwards, and just like some guys get their arm and they do like basically like draw the line, like split the posts where they're going to aim. I just kind of look that way. I kind of just like lean back, take in where I'm kicking the ball, and then I take my steps to the side. And whenever I take my steps to the side, I don't know, I just like developed it so I had a routine. I always put my hands on my hips when I'm taking my steps to the side. And so just because it's something that helps me get into like a routine. And then like when I'm back in my steps and like I got my line and my snapper, my holder, and they're there. I mean, we have a cadence that way. The line knows up and when the ball is going to be snapped, and then also just for the operation as well, when to get it off. And just kind of mentally when you're back in your steps, what goes through my head is like it's a little bit of nerves. And I feel you're lying if you said you never have nerves, because there's always going to be a little bit of a gutsy feeling to, okay, like the team is relying on me, I'm on the field to help them. And that's what I feel like so unique about kicking is when you're on offense, maybe the quarterback may feel the same way, but there's a lot more guys that help around you. When it's the special teams unit, especially field goal, it's the line as well. But once the snap and the hold are down, if once all those things are perfect, it's all comes up to my job and how am I able to execute it. So kind of mentally, it can be like a strong burden. So I feel, especially at the start of my career, those nerves, I wouldn't say they take over, but they're very strong. And so you kind of have to just get used to it and kind of break through that barrier. And then you kind of just want to focus in on your technique, because when you've been doing it for so long, there's not very much variation in how you kick the ball. So I'm not going to kick the ball super smooth one kick and then the next kick it completely differently. That's just not really how it works. You kind of always have your same like movements that you
Yeah.
like rely on. And so just the mental aspect of that is trusting your training and your hard work and being able to execute and put the ball through the uprights.
Yeah, right through the uprights. So that whole process though begins well in advance of that. So if the team is driving down the field and you know, like, hey, it's the end of the game, I got to be ready. When do you go? Okay, I have to start getting ready and start doing whatever it is that you do. How much do you pay attention to the clock and the team? You know, because if team scores, you at some point are kicking, regardless if it's a field goal or a touchdown.
Yeah.
So what does that process look like? How much earlier does it begin, and how focused are you on the field?
So I feel like, again, it comes down to like a routine. And so I feel like I have my routine just for when I'm off the field as well. So when say the offense is on the field, I usually always have my helmet on, just keep it on that way. If anything, like it's like happens, say boom, 75-yard touchdown, I can just like strap up. I don't have to like grab my go searching for my helmet, grab it, put it on. It's just already on. And then there's like the kicking net they have on the sideline that the kickers warm up to. And I like the kicking net, but there's some guys, like one of my old teammates who had transferred to Arkansas. He would warm up into the kicking net a ton, like before he even goes out on the field. I do it maybe like once or twice. I get like 1 or 2 kicks into the net and I'm good. And a lot of other times I'm just doing like mental reps.
Yeah.
Like I'll do a swing on air, so just swinging my leg. That way my leg is staying warm. But I don't actually need to kick a ball. And I usually don't go to the kicking net until the offense is around like the 50-yard line, because then usually from there it's maybe like first down and they're already like super close to field goal range. But like I don't start warming up until that 50-yard line, because if I start warming up when, say, they're at the R25, I mean, it's not very realistic. It's a little early for the warm up, because then I'll be all warmed up and then I'm kind of just like standing around, and so I feel like it defeats the purpose. But usually around that 50-yard line mark, I'll go over to the kicking net. My holder will come with me. He'll hold the ball, and I'll get like 1 or 2 swings into the net, and that's.
And how into the game are you? I mean, do you lose track? Like, oh my gosh, I have a job to do. And, you know, instead of being like a cheering, excited teammate.
I would say I like lose track of like my job, but I feel like I'm very vocal on the sidelines. Like I'll try and talk trash every once in a while. I try to limit what I say, because I don't obviously, if I get like a flag thrown on me for saying something on the sidelines, that's such a bad look, and I don't want to be. I don't want that to happen. But like I'll encourage my teammates, but I mean I know that I have a job to do. But when we're on defense, like my helmet's off, I'm there kind of with the whole group that's watching and talking, and I'm also just a fan as well. Like I'm cheering on our team, so I wouldn't say I lose focus, but I do like cheering on my teammates and trying to get on the action.
I mean, there's times even like when I'm doing the show where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right, I'm actually in this camera right here. You know, I lose track of that. So, or if I'm editing something, if I find that I end up in the show and I lose track of the fact that I'm working, I'll have to go, oh my God, I have to back up and then, you know, do those editing things again. So it just, you know, I know that I lose track, and that's, for me, is a good sign. It's a good game. It's a good video that I'm editing, whatever it's going to be. So do you ever lose track, or are you always aware that like at any point in time, I have to be ready to kick off, you know, punt or whatever it's going to be?
I mean, maybe like a little bit of losing track, but it's never to the point where I'm a liability and I have to. Maybe only once. So we had it wasn't like a fake play, but it was this play called scrum. And so it was actually my long snapper, Tama. He also played linebacker, and he's just like an athlete. He's like 260 pounds, but he's like 6 foot. So he's like a big, strong, kind of bulky guy. And we had this play where there's just a bunch of people on the line, and then he's back there basically at running back. And I was on the play as well as like a distraction. I was on the field, and we're not kicking the ball, we're running it. And he runs it. He gets like a 50-yard run.
Wow.
And I mean, my job was just as a decoy. And so we're all celebrating, and he comes off the sideline. But whenever scrum was called out, like everybody's echoing scrum, scrum, scrum. So I know I got to go out there, and it's different from calling in like field goal and all that. Cause like field goal and punt, you can anticipate that because you're getting closer. But scrum is kind of just like whenever they yell, you got to go out there, and it could be out of nowhere. And so we run scrum. I'm like, okay, sweet. I like come off the sideline after we got the big game, but they called scrum again, and I didn't hear any of the echoing. I didn't even hear it at all. And so I heard some people say it's scrum, it's scrum. I was like, what? And I look out there, everybody's out there on scrum except for me. And so I like go to run out there, but then my coach ended up calling a timeout, and I basically like just wasn't paying attention. It was kind of just lost focus. So that's one of the times where I have kind of maybe like lost train of focus, but I feel like it's different because I'm not really used to playing that like field position where you're going like back-to-back plays. Usually I get my one kick and I'm off the field. So
yeah. And then there's the aspect of you want to maintain, I imagine, a sense of calm too. So if you get too wrapped up in the game, I imagine some kickers are like, I can't watch. Just let me know when you're ready for me, kind of thing. Is that a good assumption, or is that not what you guys like to do?
I would say I try not to maybe get like too antsy or hyped up, but I also feel like it gives like energy, it gives adrenaline. I feel like you kick better and perform better when like you have adrenaline rushing. Exactly. So I do kind of invest myself in the game, but I would say maybe like more pre-game. That's where I kind of mellow down. Like there's some dudes who are getting like super hyped up, but I don't really need all that like hype up talk. I kind of just sit in my locker, got my headphones on, like play my music. I'm not running around the locker room like let's go. I'm just that's where I'm kind of zoning in, and then when we're running out onto the field before the game starts, that's where kind of all the energy explodes, and I'm feeling ready and pumped up.
Now, you're not a tiny little like soccer player kicker guy like one of the Zendejas, who's like 5'5" or whatever. You're a big dude. I'm guessing you're like 6'2", 180 or something like that, or maybe even bigger. How big are you? How much do you pride yourself on flattening people when you're going downfield to block or making that tackle that saves a touchdown? Let's talk about these other aspects of the game where your physicality. I imagine your dad wasn't slow, so I imagine you're not slow either. So if there is a fake, you're like, get the kid the ball and then look out because I'm going to go knock somebody out. Because there's got to be defensive backs that would be terrified to see you bearing down on them, I would think.
Yeah, so I'm like around 6'3", 6'4" right now, and I actually weighed myself like yesterday. I was at like 214.
Damn.
And so when I first got to college, the summer before my first season in Northern Colorado, I mean I was the same height, like 6'3", 6'4", but I was only like 170 pounds. Yeah. So just over the past 2 years, I've built on like 40 pounds, and I mean some of it is just eating more, but I feel like a lot of it is also just muscle because we're in the weight room so much that. I mean, my muscle is just going to build, and I haven't had the chance to get a tackle yet when I've been like kicking and punting and doing kickoffs. But in high school, those opportunities were there, but not yet so far in college. But I mean, I'm bigger than any of the DBs on my team, so we ran a fake against Idaho last season where I was running the ball, and I mean. I feel like I felt pretty good out there. Obviously, I'm not used to taking hits like everyone else, so the play was like it was a little botched. So one of my teammates got like pressed out of bounds, and then I'm running. I'm like just about to get the first down, and this dude jumps off from the sideline because he was on. What I thought happened is I thought their coach was so worried about me getting so much yards that he just tossed a dude out from the sidelines to stop me. And so I'm running. All of a sudden, I see this dude come off the sideline. I'm like, what the crap? Like he can't do that. And so I like ran out of bounds past the first down marker. But then when we watched the film back, one of my teammates got like pressed out of bounds by the dude. So him and my teammate were out of bounds, and then he jumped back in like right in front of me. But
doesn't the defender have to establish himself on the field again before he can?
Yeah. So he didn't. Like he came off the sideline, basically just like was there. I was like came right in front of me because I had like 20 more yards of open green turf, and so I thought I was about to get that 20 yards, maybe even juke out the returner.
Nice.
So, but this dude came out of nowhere. I'm like I just need to get the first down, and so I mean he came back on the field, but it was just kind of interesting and a little weird. But I mean, I was probably playing at 190, 195 last season, so I'm already up like 20 pounds from last season. So I definitely feel a lot bigger. I feel like it'd be fun to lay a hit this season and just let people know what type of timing I'm on. But
yeah. But I mean, you get to do that, right? You can run downfield. You're fast.
Yeah.
So you can run down and you kick the ball 5 seconds in the air on a punt. You can get pretty far downfield and just lay it on somebody because they're not at all expecting your giant ass to be running, kicking, and blocking the hell out of somebody. Even just the block would be like, damn, pay attention to that guy.
Yeah.
And now you got someone who's hopefully spying you to go, what's he doing? Because he's not just a kicker back there.
Yeah, it definitely be exciting, especially on a punt this year. Just if stuff is working out and say this dude's breaking into a hole. I mean, my job kind of as the kicker is I'm like the last line of defense. Like I'm basically that safety.
Yeah.
And so if my gunners aren't like wrap him up and then he's starting to run through a hole, if I just fill that hole, I should be able to lay a hit, make a tackle, which would be fun and exciting because I feel if it is like a good tackle and I'm not getting my am I allowed to cuss on this? I don't know. All right. So if I'm not getting my ass like laid over and I lay like his ass out, it's gonna hype up the crowd. It's gonna hype up my teammates. It's gonna bring a lot of juice. Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be super exciting. And I almost had the opportunity last season to do that on a punt, and the returner tripped like right in front of me. So if he didn't trip, I would have had to make the tackle. But he came through this hole and then tripped and like landed right in front of me. And I jumped on him to make it look like I would have made the tackle. But I mean, I think I would have made the tackle, but it didn't go on the stat sheet. I'd say I'm decent, maybe a little iffy just because, I mean.
That's not your job.
Yeah, but they have the specialists do tackling drills every now and then with the team just because, I mean, we are on the field and eventually you never know, we may have to make a tackle. And so it's always just good to be prepared.
And what's the general theory on like when you tackle somebody? Are you just throwing your body in front of them? Are you just trying to run into them? Are you trying to get in front of them, get in front of their hips, wrap them up, and take them to the ground?
Yeah, it's especially, I feel like a lot as a specialist, you're going against returners most of the time when you're trying to make a tackle. It's not like you're going to be going against a lineman who's a little sluggish. It's going to be a quick dude. And so like one of the things that's important to us that the coaches like instill and teach us is to use the sideline. So if we can use the sideline to our advantage, that's pretty good. And then also you just got to run your feet. What you don't want to do is say he's coming through the hole and then you kind of stop there because then you're basically dead weight and he can put a move and shift you. But if you're closing the distance and if you just like chest up tackle and like wrap up around him and keep your feet moving, then you should be able to like I believe I should be able to take the return to the ground. I'm probably bigger than a lot of the returners right now.
Yeah. And then there used to be a pitcher in the major leagues named Kyle Farnsworth. Hey Kyle, love your game. Kyle Farnsworth would throw about 100 miles an hour and tended to hit people sometimes. And so people thought they could run out to the mound to fight Kyle. But Kyle would be like, oh no, I'll meet you halfway. And he'd run out, and one time he just wrapped up a guy like a linebacker, dropped him into the ground, and just started beating the hell out of him. We're not proposing violence or anything here, but there is a thing that you learn, like, oh, don't charge the mound against Kyle Farnsworth, because it's just not going to pay the bills because the guy can fight and is not afraid of fighting. And I'm not saying you should fight, but there is a mentality that you can have as a pitcher, as a kicker, someone who's supposed to be not part of the minute-to-minute interaction of the game and say, no, I'm going to, this is a violent game. I'm going to bring the violence that I can bring. Is that kind of how you see this? Or is it better for you to stay healthy and avoid some of that extra stuff that you could avoid? And I don't want to say that you want to be out there headhunting like that, but like just being a football player when you're no longer kicking.
I feel like it's important just to have the mentality because I feel like where you kind of start to slow down, maybe you start to stand still is that's when you're nervous. Like, oh, I got to make a hit. Like I'm a bit nervous about tackling this guy, but that's what I feel like you should have in a linebacker is in a linebacker. I feel like those dudes should just not care about their body and should just basically just like throw their bodies at the guy and just try and hit as hard as they could. Obviously you gotta be smart about it and have a good tackle. But if you're hesitating in the fact that you have to come downhill and make this tackle, it's not necessarily the best look because that's where you're gonna hesitate and things could go wrong and he could get past you. But if you just kind of eliminate those thoughts of nervousness about making this tackle and you just go in there, make the tackle, and maybe it won't feel so good after, but I one of the things that's important, even just as like in the kicking position, is if you're in the weight room and you're lifting and you're stretching, your body's gonna feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the key things about last season. Like going into the season, it was the most I've ever been working out and stretching and lifting. I was eating good. I felt like Superman. My body, I was kicking like every day, lifting every day, and like at the end of the day, my body would be tired, but I wake up the next day, I feel good.
Yeah.
That's because I'm in the weight room, and so just off of my training, like making a tackle, I should be able to get up from it and feel fine.
Yeah, and you're young.
Yeah.
So there used to be a kicker. There's two kickers I want to ask you about. One of them was named Ray Wershing, and then he would run out and he'd have his head down, and he would never look up the whole time. And then Joe Montana would twist him in the right direction, and then he would kick. He would never see the kick until after it was already gone and on the way. And there's a guy named Tony Franklin that kicked for Philadelphia, and he was, I think, the last barefooted kicker. So do you know anything about these guys?
I've never heard.
Can you imagine not even looking up once? Like that was his thing. He took it. It's kind of like if you golf. Like when I used to golf, I don't golf anymore. But when I used to golf, I would never look at the water. I would even take my visor and put it down over my eyes like this, so I couldn't see the water, because then I wouldn't hit the ball into the water. It was kind of my version of Ray Wershing. So when you hear about someone who does this thing, or I don't know, there's so many kickers that have a specific thing. Like who was that? Was it Gould who turned the other direction? When he kicked from the Bears, he would face the opposite direction, and then he would rotate and then kick the ball. It was such a unique thing.
I think, just as a kicker myself and hearing what they do, I wouldn't say it's so much of a superstition as it is kind of just like their training and the kicker that just wouldn't look up.
Right.
That makes sense because you don't need to, as long as you're like looking at the ball, like kicking it, you don't need to look up and see where the ball goes, because the crowd's going to tell you where the ball went. It's going to tell you if it was good or not. So
he didn't look when he was coming on the field. He kept his head down.
I feel like maybe for him it was just a thing of maybe blocking out distractions. Like if he's so hyper fixed on the goalposts.
Right.
Even that's where I found some struggles early in my college career. Like my first season when I redshirted, it was a bad season. I struggled, and my thing that I had to fix was I would kick the ball and I would come up too quickly. So sometimes I didn't even kick the ball yet, and I'm already pulling up to look at the uprights. But what I started to do is just like, it doesn't matter. I don't need to see where the ball goes right after. I just need to focus on hitting the ball good. So what I think he was doing is just kind of blocking out that distraction already. It's like I don't even need to worry about the uprights.
Right.
So.
And what about a barefoot kicker like Tony?
Barefoot kicking, I've never been able to understand, just because
in any weather.
I don't know. I feel like cleats help me kick. Like kicking in cleats helps me kick better. So I don't understand how dudes did that.
Tried it?
No, I've never even. Well, I've kicked the ball with my barefoot, but I feel like once you're used to kicking barefoot, maybe it won't hurt. But when you're not used to, I feel like it kind of hurts a little bit.
Your shoe's not that thick though.
It's a thin shoe, but I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around.
Homework assignment. Kick a couple. When you go out to kick tomorrow, take the shoe off and see how it feels. Can you imagine on a cold day though?
I couldn't imagine on a cold day.
Like 15 degrees or something.
Just like you're standing in the snow in your bare feet. I can't imagine that. I don't know how they didn't break anything. I
know, it's crazy, but he did kick that way his whole career. There's a way of reason why people don't do it though. Otherwise, if it was great, everybody would do it, right? But that's not what he did. So Adam Vinatieri always struck me as a guy, as a kicker, who was just not just good, but like right through the damn middle. Like I think about that first game against the Raiders and the Patriots and the tuck rule, and Vinatieri kicks the ball to ice the game, and it's like you could not put it any more in the middle, way the hell above the crossbar, and snow just falling all around it, and none of it bothered him. He was just an assassin with that foot of his, and it was just lethal.
I feel like that's a great comparison for a kicker as like an assassin, because I feel like they're trained to have like no emotions and they just go out there and do their job. Like they can't, like, no regrets or anything. I feel like that's the same thing, almost mentality you have to have as a kicker. It's like you got to go out there. You can't be worrying about the crowd, or can't believe the crowd gets you, or you can't be in your own head. You just have to be like cold-blooded, do your one job, one stroke, boom, through the uprights. But that's what kind of sets apart the guys that are in the big leagues from the guys who come out of college and end up not finding a spot, is just the training and consistency. Because the thing with like one of the greats like Vinatieri
Yeah.
is he's just so damn consistent. It's
Yeah.
like the same kick for him every time. And I mean, that's what I'm working towards. Just the point where every time I'm going to kick the ball, it doesn't matter the conditions, it doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter who's even snapping and holding for me. If as long as I'm kicking the same every time, the margin for error is like there's almost going to be no error just because it's going to be so perfect.
Yeah. I was watching a football game from 1988 the other day. It was the Raiders versus the Broncos in Denver, and there were these two kicking brothers, the Barr brothers, Chris and Matt Barr, I think were their names, and not very powerful legs, but if you got them a 35-yard field goal, it's 99%. They just didn't miss. You push it out to 40, it started getting a little wobbly, and because they weren't long kickers, but for that era of football, they knew like, hey, we'll get it to the whatever that is, the 17-yard line or whatever it is, and give it to Matt, and it's going to go right through, right? And because they were so solid, they kicked for a long, long time, And again, they weren't going to kick a 50-yard field goal. They weren't at all. It's a different game, different time. You guys all boom the ball now. But it's crazy, like the level of competition. I guess that's what I want to get into is when you look at your future. There's only so many kicking jobs in the NFL, right? And then, okay, there's some alternate leagues, arena, and all that stuff, but there's still really only so many jobs, and there are so many college kickers. How do you see your future? Is this something that you're doing to get you through college, or do you have professional aspirations?
I would say I have professional aspirations. I feel like that's a good thing to have. I mean, obviously there's some guys, and I feel like with other positions, you're taking more of a beating. So maybe you just get to the point where like, oh, my body hurts. It's just something I'm going to do through college. But I mean, for me, and this is the thing that's so cool about kicking is it doesn't matter where you're going to school because you're kicking the same football.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe the crowd's a little bit smaller where I'm at, and maybe it doesn't feel as high pressure, but how I'm kicking the ball is on me compared to say like some of my fellow teammates. If you're on the D line, you're going against offensive linemen in the Big Sky. They're not going to be as big and strong as offensive linemen at Alabama.
Right.
So in that aspect of other positions, it's almost you have to compare them to the competition. But I mean, for kicking, one of the examples I like to use is Jason Myers, the Seattle Seahawks kicker. He went to a D2 and he's in the league. And there's a bunch of other guys who you don't have to be at like the Alabamas, like Clemson or big powerhouse schools to be a really good kicker. It's just on how consistent you are. And so that's why I have aspirations to like after college to go to the league because it doesn't matter where you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be at the smallest school known to mankind, but if you're the best kicker, you're the best kicker.
Yeah.
And so as long as I keep on working, and although like you yourself have to work, I also feel a great help is who's alongside you. So, I mean, that's one of the things I really love about Northern Colorado is Coach Lamb and his staff who came in after my freshman season that I redshirted. It just feels like I got the right guys behind me, the right coaches who are going to help me propel myself forward, hopefully into the NFL. And they just have so much belief and confidence in me and support that it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you can really do it.
I don't want to put you on the spot because I'm not looking for a big scoop or anything, but you can always enter the portal and say, okay, done a couple of years at this lower level Division I. Now I need to go shine. And then you do go to wherever it is, Ohio State, like that. Is that, I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer that, but is that possible? Because a kicker of your level, your peers, whoever your peers are in all of the NCAA, whether they're Division II, whatever, is it a smart move to get in the portal and to find a different program? Or do you think is it better to maintain the program that you're in because it's such a repetitive kind of thing?
Well, I feel like it's different for different people. So, I mean, I was in the transfer portal for 2 weeks after that season that I redshirted because I was with Coach McCaffrey and his staff at Northern Colorado. They recruited me, and then that first season was just a bad season, not only for myself, like on the field, but I would just say also mentally, I was like, man, it's only November. I'm like, man, I want to go home. I'm like calling my mom, like, I don't like it out here.
Yeah.
So my confidence was probably just at like an all-time low. And I feel there's some guys who just get in the portal because they do have those aspirations. Maybe they do want to play after college, but in college they also just want to play for those big teams. And hear those big crowds and really just feel part of a big name program.
Yeah.
But so I was in the portal for 2 weeks, and I kind of just the same for the portals. Like the grass is not always green,
Right.
and so I mean I saw that firsthand. I went in and I was like reaching out to coaches and not really getting what I wanted. I mean, obviously my numbers couldn't speak for themselves because they were just bad. They were pretty bad,
Yeah.
but I feel like just kind of what's important for me is just confidence,
Yeah.
and I feel like I do feel like I have the ability to enter the portal and possibly go to a big name school, but it's I'm just looking at how much is my confidence going to take a hit. Obviously, I can stay confident, but I'm going somewhere new, somewhere like I haven't experienced. Well, it's almost like moving away from home. You're always used to like humans aren't really used to change, and they don't really
Yeah.
like change. So that's why I like Northern Colorado, because I got like my family with me, my coaches, and even my teammates. I love my teammates and my roommates at
Yeah.
Northern Colorado. So it just instills so much confidence in me. I feel like that's why I have a great shot from Northern Colorado, is because the amount of confidence and the support and just the morale that I have is so high.
I was watching you practice today, and you definitely kicked the stuffing out of the ball. What is your effective range right now, and what could it be when you complete all of? I mean, like you said, you're eating, you're lifting, you're stretching, you're kicking, right? So you're going to get better because you're super young, but you're huge, right? If you figure out how to get that leg swinging, almost like Usain Bolt, like all he had to do is once he stood up, he was going so fast because he was so much taller than his peers. Where are you at now, and where do you think you'll be in terms of kicking and punting?
One of the things I feel like helps me right now is, I mean, just my size. Because if you think about my leg is so much longer, it's almost like a lever. It comes back and swings through. So just the fact that I already have like such a big frame and I have so much power, I feel that I don't have to focus my game on having to hit farther, stronger ball. It's more of just kind of nailing down that consistency that you see from the guys in the league. They're always just hitting the ball that they want to hit, and they're always just hitting the ball that looks good. And so that's what I have to work most on. But I mean, I was hitting 60 today, and that was feeling pretty good. My longest ever was 70. Granted, I did have a lot of wind at my back.
Yeah.
But
you still got to kick it.
Yeah. And so my longest in game was 50 last season against Portland State. And so, I mean, I like to say like 60, although it's like a super far kick, even with like the snap and hold, I would say I could get it there a decent amount of times, say at least over 50%. Obviously, a 60-yard kick, the success rate is probably under 50%, just if you look at stats from the league as well. So, although it's a far kick, I would say that's probably like the maximum. Obviously, if we need to try farther, I'm going to go back and really try and put my leg into the ball. But then inside 50 is like pretty smooth range. And just kind of, I feel like as I grow up, as I man up and just I even get bigger, my goal is to get 225 by season, just so I can just put all my weight behind the ball. And it's not like I have to really try that hard, but it's just about consistency. And I feel like 50 and in, I'm pretty smooth, pretty dialed in. And obviously, once you get farther back, that's where you just need to stay mentally focused. It's not about having to kick the ball harder. It's just having to hit my good ball smooth. And just based off of how I'm swinging, I should be able to make it from here.
Yeah, that's great to hear. It's fun. And then the punting side, where are you at with that?
With punting, there's like a ton of things that go into punting. Punting at first, I was like, man, I hate punting because there's so many different things, just like your steps. But then what I really need to focus on is the drop, and that's probably like the most important part about punting is you need to get, when you're dropping the football, it just needs to be like perfect every time. And so that's just where I need to work on, is just getting my drop like the right height and just flat and not a lot of movement, and just that's where I need to build that consistency. But I mean, obviously, like the power is there, because when I do get that good drop and I swing up through it, it's a really good ball. And just increasing the amount of times I can drop the ball perfectly, then it'll allow me to get a better swing on the ball. And then that's when I'll start to get a better ball, is when I'm more consistent.
Yeah. I'm bringing up all these old kicker names and everything, but it's just, they make sense and everything. So there was a kicker. I was watching you punt today, and there was a kicker named Reggie Roby who never left the ground, but his foot just went straight up in the air, hyper flexible. And he was a big dude. He was not small. So kind of on par with you. And it was because there was all those guys that would like look good or bad. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me, but they would kick and they'd be like a foot and a half in the air. They kick with so much force, but he was just always boom, and he could just boom the ball. That's one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about is punting seems to have more swings. Like I need a hang time kick. I need to coffin corner kick. I need to angle away from this guy, and all of these different techniques that you have to master. It seems to me punting has more things you have to deal with, including catching the ball and then dropping it, from wherever you get it and then dropping it in the same way. So
Yeah.
you get it to turn over.
Yeah, punting. I memean, once you get pretty good at punting, that's when it gets like pretty fun because then you're not just hitting stinkers off left to right. And I mean, you still get some of those. Like I felt pretty good about it. I only had like 2 shanks last season, and obviously you don't want to have any shanks, but just the fact that I wasn't shanking left and right was just good, and I was happy about that. And I mean, it's fun. It's almost kind of like punting is when you have to do like those pooch punts where you're trying to place it.
Yeah,
that's when it's fun because when you get like a punt that goes inside the 5, it's like you feel really good because you know that the other team's gonna just their success rate of getting out of their own backed up position is really low, and so it's that's the part of punting where it's fun. It's almost like a dartboard, and you're trying to just like throw your darts where you want the ball to go.
A guy I used to work with, he was a high school coach. He coached JV, and he would tell the rest before every game, we are never going to punt the ball. If you think you see us punt the ball, we haven't. We're not going to do it. And we would have someone on the line would imitate the sound of you kicking the ball, which would affect how the rules, because the ball hadn't been kicked. And so that punter would be like a quarterback, and then he would throw out. It was a crazy thing. But he said it worked. Half the time he'd get a penalty that he got him the first down, and the other half he would just come through on the fake punt. So there's trickery like that's out there. Is there any particular favorite plays that you have on fakes or whatever it's going to be?
I haven't really had a fake where I've had to pass the ball yet, but I feel like
you throw pretty good.
I feel like I can throw decent. Obviously, I'm not a quarterback, but I mean, if the dude's open,
but you know how far you can throw the ball.
Yeah, I feel like if it's like within my throwing range, which I mean, I kind of have to huck the ball like 50, like really put into it. So if it's like 40 and in, I feel like I can place it there, at least in the general area of the receiver. But and then we had like our run fake last year, and that was good. I had to like juke like 2 dudes out just off of when I caught the ball, because originally when we were playing Idaho, we were scouting them. They brought a guy off of each edge, and then I was supposed to run up the middle. So we run the fake, and I catch it. I look up. And there's the guys off the edge. All right, I'm all right. And then there's a third guy up the middle who was uncalled for in our scouting film. And so I like caught it. I was like, fuck. And I had to bounce it outside. And so I like cut out. And then one of them went past me. Another dude went past me. His hand hit my side and like hit my jersey. I thought he was just gonna grab my jersey and like throw me, but I like got away from him, and that's when I got the first down. But kind of just like cool trick plays like that's always fun because then it shows that you kind of always just have to be locked in no matter when it's offense, defense, or special teams. And that's why another reason just the coaches are so good in Northern Colorado is they really do value special teams. And so
should they call more fake kicks though for you, so like they know that you're a threat? Because like if I know that you're going to go out there and run fast if you get the ball and you can throw the ball 40 yards pretty accurately, that gives me a different problem as a coach.
I know I mean, I'm sure people will be on alert next season just because I feel like our punt's pretty unique and there's a lot of different things we can do with it. So there's just a lot of surprises I feel like we could pull. And then field goal, I feel like we haven't really drafted anything up, but I mean, I think we're just focused on putting the ball to the uprights on field goal. But punt, we've worked in a couple of fakes.
Yeah, it's the end of the half. Coach is like, "Hey, we're on our half of the field, but be ready." What's too much? What's too far?
I mean, I mean, the NFL record, what, Justin Tucker's 67 or
Yeah.
66. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's far. And granted, we are in Colorado, so the ball there's a little bit lighter,
Yeah.
and so it does carry a bit farther. So I feel like 65 that's kind of like that's like a Hail Mary kick. That's the one where it's pretty low success rate, but if I get that A ball that's really clean and crisp and it goes, then it can go in. But obviously, if it's raining, then that number gets chopped down.
Yeah.
If the wind is coming at us, the number gets chopped down. Even if it's windy going across the field,
Yeah.
then because the ball can really move a lot. But when it's at your back, that's where you start adding the numbers. Like, all right, I feel good. I could go from pretty far today.
Put me in the stand. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know a candlestick was so horrible that like the numbers on 50-yard kicks were like 5%. Like no one made it. And you'd see the ball; it was going great, and then whoosh, it just get blown off course because it was just there was no way to master that. You couldn't kick the ball through the wind. There was no way to do it. So there must be stadiums that you guys go to where you're like, oh, we got to stay 40-yarders are in because it's too crazy with the weather that we got.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. When our first game at Portland State, I wasn't playing that. It was like my freshman year that I redshirted. It was pretty nasty weather, a little windy. So I feel like that could be, especially if it's closer to the like November end of the season. That's when the weather is going to get a little more nasty.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can get windy in Greeley. That's more of like in the spring though.
Yeah.
And so I don't really think. I mean, we haven't had a bad game at Nottingham Field, which is our home stadium, since I've really been there. That we haven't had such a windy game. And I'm trying to think of just Cal Poly was a little bit windy at the start, just because it's kind of close to the coast.
Yeah.
And I mean,
fog there too.
Yeah, it was a little foggy, but I feel like ones that would be really windy is Idaho State, but they have it indoors, so it's like that already eliminates all the wind.
Right.
But I can't really. Maybe Weber could be windy. I haven't played there yet. I think we play there this season.
And this is your third season. You're a fresh redshirt.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be a redshirt sophomore. So my first year coming out of high school, I played 4 games, and so if you like, that's the limit. If you play 5 games, you can't redshirt anymore. Right. It's 4 and under, so I was still able to redshirt. So that really, me getting benched was like a blessing in disguise, just because it gave me that next year, it saved me a year, gave me that year to really prepare and get dialed in.
Yeah.
And then this past year was amazing, which was good.
Yeah.
And then going into my third year, redshirt sophomore year.
Yeah. Will you play all 5 years that you get then, or will you? Do you think when you graduate, you'll take off to the NFL, or will you stay around?
Jeez, I don't even know. I feel like that's something you kind of play by like ear almost, or just kind of how you're feeling. Maybe a little bit closer to that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. That's kind of a question that stumps me.
Yeah. Well, and then at some point you've got to get an agent too, who's like, hey, here's what I think, here's what I can sell. As I can sell you to the Buccaneers, or like, oh, you got to go do a year in the AF, whatever it's going to be, right? So you got to make those decisions. Then I wanted to ask you about the academic side because, we always forget that you guys are student athletes, right? But you actually have math class to go to and humanities and all that stuff. So how has that been? Were you a good student in high school?
Yeah, I was all right. I think I had like a 3.3 in high school. So, people have vices, and so I would say my biggest vice is probably video games. Like, I like my video games, and so definitely in high school, that definitely took me a little bit away from my academics, was video games. So, but definitely towards the end of high school, that's where I kind of was more focused, and especially knowing when I have to go to college, I can't really afford to really slack around. So I'd say more of my bad grades were at the start of high school, but I was a decent high school student.
Yeah. And then how is it now being, again, like you play this, you're eating, you're lifting, you're stretching, you're kicking, at some point you're going to video game. Oh, and by the way, a full load, I'm assuming, right? You're trying to graduate in 4 years?
Yeah, it would be sweet to graduate 4 years, because then I get that, if I'm taking that 5th year, then like master's probably, or I don't really know what it is, but
whatever, you get close to it.
Yeah. But college school has been pretty good. I feel like University of Northern Colorado is not the toughest school. Like, it's not your Stanford, Harvard. It's not ones where you really have to dedicate a lot of time. And you still have to dedicate time. And so My first year was actually really good, and I mean, both years I'm pretty sure I made like the all academic team. I don't know for the Big Sky, but just like for the school, I've maintained above a 3.6. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
or something around there. But my freshman year is definitely better than my sophomore year of school.
Yeah.
Because I definitely do still play a decent amount of video games. So there's just some times where my
Yeah.
school's a little lacking, and also I don't know if it was because the increase in workload where I was kicking a lot more. But man, during the season, I could not get out of bed. I knew my class would be at 10. I'd like wake up at 9:30, and then I would just go back to sleep. Like I would just end up missing class. So definitely at the start, around season time, I was missing a couple classes, just staying in bed. But towards this second semester of this past year, I definitely got a lot more focused in. I almost got more of a routine as well, like I had with kicking, and just kind of realized like, okay, like I can't play football without doing well in my classes. So I do need to do all my classes. So what I just started doing is if I had homework, just get away from my distractions, my computer. I would just pop over to the library and pull out my Surface and just work on my assignment there. When I'm done, just go back home, and then I'm free to do what I want to do. But just kind of getting rid of those distractions.
Yeah. I mean, part of being a pro and part of what you learn in college, you learn how to meet people because there's always new people from all over the world that you encounter. And then also, yeah, you learn how to like, okay, it's one thing to go learn whatever, Aboriginal history from 1882 to 1972, but the ability to take on a class, to learn how to go to school, how to navigate professors and all of those things, and to get rid of your shyness. Like, and you can tell any young person, and I go talk to high school kids from my school all the time. And I'll say, if you go to college, go talk to your professor. Because when you do that, they're like, holy shit, you're here. You can see me. I exist outside of the class, and it blows them away. It's all these little things, they add up so that you can accentuate what you already have academically in your head, right? And you learn how to go to school. But you also have another job where you have to learn how to go play football. And this all goes into the pro status. And so, yeah, there's room for video games, but you realize like there is 90 minutes a day or whatever that number is, right? And after that, I don't have time because you definitely need sleep.
Yeah.
To recover.
Yeah, sleep is definitely important. And that's where I would start missing classes. I'm like, all right, I need to get my 8 hours. Well, if I'm going to bed if I end up going to bed at like 1, it's like,
yeah,
I just wouldn't end up cutting myself short on sleep. I'll just sleep in a little longer. It's like maybe I missed that class, and then so that's towards the end of the year when I really started like really focusing in, and then that's when I'd start going to bed earlier and then waking up earlier.
Yeah.
And what I really started wanting to do is I started drinking green tea because I saw that it helped improve brain function and kind of like get you up, and so I started drinking that, and I feel like it did help me. I don't know if it was like a placebo effect where just the thought of it helping me, but yeah.
You went to the Tom Brady roast the other day, so you think about Tom and what he does with his day, with his diet, and there's just no rule breaking, right? It's all designed to optimize him, and you think about how hard he competed off the field, how regimented, and how laser focused he was. That there's a huge gap between being an amateur where you are now and being a professional, and then being an elite professional. That's definitely a skill. Do you think you have the examples in front of you to master some of these professional skills before you graduate?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe so. Like, I feel like my dad's a professional. He's locked in, and I feel like he's locked in with everything, and he knows a lot, which is, I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, but even just like my head coach, Ed Lamb, I feel like he's almost as professional as you can get. He just almost always knows how to handle like every situation. He's a smart guy. He played college football at BYU, so he knows, like, he's been in our position before. He knows what can harm us, whether that's staying up too late, like the booze, the drugs, and he knows what's going to help us eliminating that stuff and like focusing more on your hard work in the weight room and even your classes, because I mean, we really are student athletes first, and so you do need to take your classes seriously. And again, like probably the millionth time I said this, like that's why I like Northern Colorado, and just because the people I feel like I have around me and the coaching staff, I feel like they are professionals. I feel like they're examples for me.
Do you guys have letters? Do you get like a letter for playing football at all, or is that over with now? Like in the old college days, you could letter in sports still. I don't know if they still do that.
No, I think I'm pretty sure they do. Like I'm pretty sure we can get Letterman's jackets, and
Yeah,
so I do believe that's still a thing.
yeah. If you could play one more sport, like if you had the time to do it, which one would it be at college? Like if you were to go walk on somewhere.
I mean, it'd probably be soccer, just because like soccer was always, I would say, like my first love.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, it's probably still like my favorite sport. Maybe not to play. Like I really love playing football, but
yeah,
in terms of watching, like I love watching soccer. Like the English Premier League, if it's on during the weekend, like I'm
yeah,
getting up, I'm watching it.
yeah,
So I would definitely probably play soccer, and because that's what I played growing up, and then I stopped in like 8th grade. That's when I stopped, and because I mean, it just got a little bit boring for me. But also, I was when I quit soccer, I was the smallest on my team. I was like 5'6", 5'7".
yeah,
I was a small, little scrawny kid, and so last winter break, so this past December when I went home, I played. It was like a pickup game with one of my buddies who plays at a D2 in Seattle,
yeah,
and it was like him and his teammates and the girls team from his college, and like I did pretty good. So it's like I
yeah,
feel like give me like a couple months training,
yeah,
then I feel like I could work my way back into it. I feel like I'd be pretty good. So I definitely think that'd be fun. But obviously, a sport they don't have in the United States is like Aussie rules football.
Oh, sure.
I, look, even just watching it is so
Yeah,
much fun,
it's exciting.
and so I feel like just because that's kind of what I'm already doing is punting and kicking, and that it's already kind of centered around that,
Yeah,
and so I feel like it'd be so fun to almost just take like an expedition to Australia. Maybe I'm staying there for like a year training
yeah,
at it and like trying to get good at that. I feel like that would be extremely fun. So it's something that I want to try and look into, but it'd probably have to be after college.
yeah. Well, if you have pro aspirations in there and they're aspirating for you, well, then you're like, oh, I'll play Australian rules football later, right?
Yeah.
Can you drop kick?
Yeah, I believe like drop kick where it bounced off the
Yeah,
ground.
yeah.
No, I can't drop kick, but I mean it doesn't really seem like a lot of it's out of their hands. They don't really let it bounce and hit the floor. That's
Right,
more of like just normal rugby,
right, right.
but um, but it definitely looks hard just because it's like kicking but punting. Like punting, obviously you have like your target, but it's basically like mixing the two. You're trying to punt it
Yeah,
through uprights.
yeah. Are football players real football players?
Like, are you saying like specialists are people too? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like, are these guys like are you part of that team as much as a linebacker or as a right tackle?
yeah, I mean, I definitely believe so because not only are we going on the field trying to help the team, um, but just like you're in the weight room with all the other guys,
Yeah,
you're in the meetings with all the other guys. And now, obviously, they're bigger guys. They're getting in on the action. They're making tackles and stuff. But
they can't kick the ball 20 yards though.
if I'm putting points on the board
Yeah,
for the team, guys are going to respect you. And so that's what I feel also gives you confidence
yeah,
as a specialist is if you're doing your stuff on the field and you're helping out the team, guys are gonna cheer you on, guys are gonna respect you, and
yeah,
you're gonna get close to those guys. So I mean, all my roommates are I got like a D end, I got a tight end, I got a lineman. They're all big guys, and
yeah,
so just already starting in that group, just moving in with them freshman year,
yeah,
and I'm already knowing guys from other positions. It helps bring you closer to the team.
yeah. So if you are starting all 4 years, you stay through your redshirt senior year, so it's 5 years total, but 4 years playing the game. You got a legitimate shot at being the all-time point scorer at your school. Have you thought about this seriously at all, or no?
Yeah, and even just when I like decided to go there is one
Yeah.
of the things my dad talked to me about. It's like
Uh-huh.
it was like you can go there and think of it like as a pit stop, or you can go there and want to be like one of the legends at Northern Colorado. And
Yeah,
so, I mean, I definitely think I have a shot.
yeah,
Um, I think we just need to get a little bit more in field goal range next season.
yeah,
I had 12 field goal attempts last season. I could have had a little bit more, but there was a couple fourth downs that we went for it on. But I definitely think I could have a lot of attempts this next season.
yeah,
And so, just um, obviously staying all the years will help me, but
yeah,
also just kind of it's what do you want your legacy to be? You want your legacy to be your at like a small school and then you go to a big school and you're just at the big school, or do you want to like build something special?
Yeah.
And so that's why I really like Northern Colorado, because that's what the coaches are trying to do. They're trying to build a legacy. Like Northern Colorado has been a losing program ever since they moved up to the Division I FCS level. And so if you turn that around, people are going to come to the games. The city of Greeley is going to become involved, and it's going to become something special.
Right. And if they do some more fakes, you got a chance to the house.
Oh, I would love to get some points on the board. I feel like it's just because it's something so unique for a specialist.
Yeah.
But if you ever get a touchdown, it's probably one of the highlights of your career.
Yeah. I mean, I could just picture you running and then just, big thigh to the chest and some guy tries to tackle you, and just Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell used to be an incredible player for breaking tackles. But, there's no reason. There's kickers that have done this kind of thing who've been, bigger dudes and have been a force on the field.
Yeah, so just continuing my stuff in the weight room and just continuing my work ethic. I'm not going to look like a kicker, but I'm going to kick the ball like one. So
I love it. All right, so we've almost been at this for an hour, so I thought I'd let you. Is there anything you'd want to ask, or is there anything that I should have asked you? Because I don't know how many of these you've done, but I imagine not very many. So what do we not know about who you are or what you do?
So, I mean, one of the reasons I chose Northern Colorado is, because I like the state of Colorado. And so I've pretty much just grown up in Washington my whole life. And I love Washington, and just, I feel like it's really good to almost find a outlet away from home. Like, there's some people that really do like to stay at home, and just kind of like their area that they know. But I do feel like it's important to kind of venture elsewhere. I mean, that's what I want to do. I haven't even been outside the country yet, so I'm like preaching about trying to venture elsewhere. But so that's one of the things I want to do, is eventually I want to go to Europe and see some of the places over there. But I feel like one of the things that's really helped me with football is you just gotta like put in work outside of like your scheduled practices and stuff. And this applies to everything. This applies to just your job as well. If you're just clocking into work and you're getting your work done, like that's good on you. But what's really going to set you apart is the work you do outside of that, like the extra work. Now, it doesn't have to be catered towards your field, but even just like finding something else, whether that's the weight room or like something else, it's going to give you more outlets. It's going to make you a better human being. And so that's what's kind of catapulted kicking for me. And that's kind of why I feel like I was kind of stuck in the same place in soccer. It's because the only time I was practicing when I go to my organized practices, I know some of my like teammates from the past who have made it to the levels they have in soccer and college now, is because they were putting that work outside the field. And I mean, that's what I did in football. In football, there's a lot of stuff you got to do outside your normal practice time on your own time. It's like what you do on your own time is going to set you apart from the rest. And that applies to everything, not only sports.
It sure does. What's your longest in-game field goal right now?
50 yards.
50 yards?
50 yards. So I'm hoping I can break that next season.
What's going to be your longest one this season? When we come talk next year, what are you going to say to me?
I think the school record's like 57. So you get a little 58 in there. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. Tell your coach right now to the camera. I want to crack at a 58-yarder.
Coach Lamb and Coach Paycheck. Coach Paycheck's the special teams coordinator. I would love to have a school record for the longest field goal at the University of Northern Colorado. So let's make it happen, okay?
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank